It was a funny kind of an election campaign really, because everyone was expecting such a disastrous result for Labor. When the results came in and it wasn't quite so bad, it sort of felt like Labor was excited and the coalition was a bit subdued. The coalition, after all, had just won maybe 18 seats, a decisive victory. But the sense of the night, the feel of the night seemed all a bit kind of upside down, really.
We certainly expected Tony Abbott to win the election, and he did. Labor's performance, while bad, was a bit better than expected. As Kevin Rudd pointed out in his concession speech in Brisbane, I think most of the cabinet preserved their seats and their positions, and that does give the Labor Party a reasonable foundation from which to rebuild.
There was some speculation in the media, and particularly in the last day or two, that Labor was headed for a real catastrophe, that they'd be lucky to hold 50 seats. It looks like now they're headed for somewhere in the mid-50s.
Obviously, an alternate leader has to be found and appointed, and a shadow front bench has to be appointed. Kevin Rudd, I thought, made a particular point in his final speech of backing in his reforms to the Labor Party, which deals the grassroots membership into the election of the leader. Those reforms it's been quiet about those reforms during the election period. However, they are very contentious, and I think the party will have quite a significant argument about whether or not to proceed with those reforms or not.
Queensland was thought to be a place where Labor was in real trouble, and through today, even election day, the rumours around that Labor might even be reduced to one or maybe even no seats at all in Queensland. That didn't turn out to be the case. As of tonight, it looks like just 2 seats in Queensland have fallen, so I think that's part of it. And also the losses that were anticipated in the western part of Sydney just didn't materialise either. And so that's very interesting. I think the betting markets, really got carried away in the home stretch. 48, 49 Labor seats. I think we're going to end up, comfortably north of there, probably, like I said, in the mid-50s. So yeah, in the end, look, it's a loss, and it's a big loss, but it isn't quite the complete catastrophe that we were looking at or talking about just in the last day or two.
What Tony Abbott was clearly signalling tonight was that he is going to be slow and steady and purposeful. He's felt the mood of the times in Australia, which really is that people are sick of politics and they're sick of the upheaval, and he's going to govern very quietly and very carefully and very steadily, and that of course gives an opposition much less to work with.
It was a short speech, it was a contained speech. It was interesting that the party, his family, gave him the stage in order to make the speech on his own terms. I think it was a fairly low-key speech. It repeated all of the major messages of the campaign. It made a virtue of this theme that he's developed through the campaign of under-promising and over-delivering. It stuck in his, in the sort of all the political parameters that we know about Tony Abbott. We'll stop the boats, and we'll move the government in the direction of a surplus, and we'll repeal the carbon price, and all of these things. So I don't think the speech surprised us in any way. I think the tone of it was in keeping with his low-key, softly approach during the election campaign, and it'll be interesting to see how Tony Abbott makes a transition from opposition leader to government. He's obviously was a minister in John Howard's government, but he's about to be the Prime Minister, and that is a completely different experience.
The big wild card, which we still don't really know the answer, we don't know how it's going to play, is the Senate, the upper house, where Tony Abbott won't have control in his own right. He'll have to get his legislation through either with the Greens or more likely with this whole strange collection of right-wing and centre-right parties. So Clive Palmer, the colourful, they colloquially call him, mining billionaire, his candidate, who's a former rugby league player who was known once as the brick with eyes. He's probably going to be a senator. And then there's a whole collection of them, sort of odd collection of senators with different ideas about things. And I think they're probably going to be the people who Tony Abbott will have to negotiate with to get his program through the Senate. And I think, that could present challenges, possibly not as big a challenge as the Greens, who are opposed to most of the things Tony Abbott wants to do, but a challenge nonetheless.